Hey, party people, it's Julia Winston here, and I am coming back because I told you guys that I asked you, do you want to talk about, should I talk about how obedience is crippling you as a pioneer, right? As a pioneer, your obedience is crippling. And so I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I recognize that this is going to be a sensitive topic to some people. And I'm going to say what I say in this world where what you say can be taken in like 15 seconds and then everybody can just determine your whole life and your whole character by a certain blurb of what you're going to say. But yeah, I'm here for it. I don't got time for this because here's what I know that the pioneer's path is different. I said that in my previous video. The pioneer's path is different. What do I and why do I say that? Because for those of you who are new to me, don't know who I am, I'm Julia Winston, CEO of Brave Leadership Consulting, and I walk my clients through their pioneer path development, right? Based on spiritual principles, based on what God and what heaven says that you are called to do in your business. And so that's my place. And so I have been supporting leaders who have been pioneers for well over a decade, probably coming up on um, 15, 16 years now or something like that. Anyway, hey, Nancy, good to see you. And so when I talk about pioneer and pioneer development, I'm talking about it from a place of supporting people who are pioneers and what the research says about pioneers and pioneer development. So let's just get into it, shall we? Tag your friends, bring the folks on in here. So as a pioneer, so this our topic today is how obedience is crippling you as a pioneer. Now, in the spiritual world, in the Christian world, in the kingdom world, we talk a lot about obedience, a lot about obedience. And we are really of this mindset of how, God, if you just tell me, I'll do it. How many of y'all, like, honestly, hardcore radical obedient? Like, Lord, if you say it, I'm there. I'm doing it. I don't care what it costs. I don't care how foolish it looks. When I know that God said something, and he tells me to do it, I'm on it. How many of you would like ascribe that to yourself, right? I would. I'd be the first one to have my hand up. And I got receipts to prove that obedience, right? Like I have many things that I can look back on and be like, I don't see this, but God said it, so I'm coming for you, right? And so hi, Cassandra. Hey, Judith. So I raise my hand and go, yes, I'm obedient. I absolutely am obedient to what God has and to what God says. And if He tells me to do it, I'm there, right? And so here's what I'm not. This is going to be my disclaimer. Here's what I'm not saying. This video is not an excuse to be disobedient. Okay, let me just be very clear. This video is not an excuse for you to be disobedient, because if you're already disobedient, you just don't need me to come alongside and be like, see, that's why I don't need to do that. Like, no, don't do that, right? But for those of you who have proven you got a track record of obedience, you can look back and see all the pathways in which you were obedient. You heard God. You obeyed him. You obeyed him when it was tough. You obeyed him when it cost you money, when it cost you friends, when it cost you reputation. You obeyed him when it cost you your comfort. You obeyed him when you couldn't see him, when you couldn't track his hand. You obeyed him. You obeyed his voice. And you got to the point where you started by obeying his feet. Where his feet went, you went. You started by obeying his hands. Whatever his hands did, you did. Then you started obeying his voice. So whatever he said, you did. Then you got close enough to him, like you were expanding in that relationship, that you started obeying his facial expressions. Okay. Now, any of you, I had a grandmama who would be in the pulpit and we cutting up in the pews, and she would give us a facial expression. She would give us a look, and we knew exactly what she meant. She didn't have to stop what she was saying, but there was a communication happening there, right? So, the scripture is talking about being so close that you guide me with your eye. So any way God has guided you, you have walked that path and you have receipts for I was obedient in the hands. I was obedient in the feet. I was obedient in the heart. I was obedient in the voice. I was obedient in the looks, right? I was obedient. Right? Okay. You did that. Now, those are the people I'm talking to. Okay. You still working on your obedience? Keep on working. Okay. Keep on working on your obedience and all that other stuff. Like, keep on doing it. Keep going. But I'm talking to the people who have laid the track for obedience. You got a stronghold around it, right? Like, you can put your hands on stuff. Y'all are the ones I'm talking to. Okay. Now, when I talk about pioneers being different, pioneers are different, right? So there are 3 stages of your pioneer development. And in one of those stages of pioneer development, one of those stages is what I call erase. Okay. And what erase does, it's you are going to come face to face with some core concepts that you would stake your life on. Like you would literally die on that hill. It's like if in corporate speak, sometimes people go, okay, things coming up. Are you willing to die on this hill? It's like, no, that's not a hill I'm willing to die on, right? But there are some things that you have experienced in your life. You're like, I'm willing to die on this hill. Okay. And what I found is obedience is one of those sacred cows. Obedience is one of those purple cows that we don't want to talk about when it comes to the pathway of the pioneer. Because at some point in every pioneer's path, obedience has to stop. That's blasphemous. This is not what I'm saying. I'm not saying you will stop obeying God, but your reliance on obedience. I'll say it this way. Obedience, I'll retrack it and I'll backtrack and say it this way. At every point in a pioneer's life, obedience has to be cast down as an idol because we have made being obedient to God an idol in our culture. So you don't have to, so you don't seek understanding anymore. When you're obedient, you don't really seek, like you want it, but seeking understanding, like the scripture says, and all that getting, get understanding, right? But the getting understanding part, that could take years. That could take time. So in this idea of obedience has become this safety net that allows us to disconnect, right? So if anything goes wrong, then it's, oh, well, God told me to do it, so I just did it because God told me to do it. And then you don't know why. You can't defend it. You're just like, hey, God said it, so here I am. And every pioneer is going to come to a point where you have to cast down the idol of obedience. Every pioneer will always, I'll say this, all pioneers will forever obey God. But in your development into being the pioneer of the thing that he's calling you to do, you will go through a stage and season of your development where your obedience is not the point. Like, boo, you did that already. Right? Your track record of obedience has elevated you to the point where now you can start doing some things. I say it this way, right? It's the point where it's like, God, tell me what to do. And you go, and he tells you what to do, and you go do it. Then God turns around and goes, now, you tell me what to do. So who's on here? Hey, Nancy. Then he goes, Nancy, tell me what to do. Teresa, tell me what to do. And you're like, what? No, God, you tell me what to do. And God goes, well, yeah. Cassandra, what do you want to do? And you're like, no, it's not about what I want to do. Not my will, but your will be done. Like we do this, right? Judy, we do this, right? Not my will, but your will be done. So when God starts asking you what you want to do, then you have no concept of what is really in your heart because obedience has been the blind leash that has prevented you from really stepping into what your desires are. Why is he asking you what do you want to do? Why is he asking you what you want to do? Because there's a place where you're going to have to understand that the makeup that you have, the things that break your heart, the things that move your heart, the things that you want to see happen, all of those things are desires that he placed in there, but you don't know them. One of my favorite scriptures says, this is the Lord's doing. No, no. What is it? No, that's not the one. I mean, that's a good one too. No. The one about I am fearfully and wonderfully made, right? We say that, but that verse also says, and I know right well. And that's the part that we don't know. Like when we say I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, we say it as if we're trying to get there. We're trying to develop a belief. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. We say it as if it's an aspiration, not something that we're already occupying. Right. And it shows because that I know right well. What is it? Do you know? Do you know what you carry? Do you know, especially if you're in this business space and entrepreneurs, like, do you know why certain things happen to you? Why people experience you the way they experience you? And I will say this, in your development journey, you will have different levels of revelation about that as you continue to go. But every pioneer in your development journey, you will get to a place where obedience can no longer be your safety net. Because think about this, okay? How many pioneers do you know? Hey, Angelia. How many pioneers do you know that were like, oh, because Honestly, like you wouldn't be a pioneer if obedience was your nameplate. Like you would just be the maintainer. God's not calling you to maintain. There are maintainers. We need them. There are followers. We need them. There are people who are called to see how a system's run and support that system. We absolutely need it. And we need the people who are going to pioneer a thing. And we need the people who are going to pioneer a thing the way God designed pioneers to work. And so I've spent especially the last 2 years, really studying in on God's development models, especially around pioneers in business. And yeah, like as a pioneer in business, you are going to have to understand what you want. You're going to have to understand what you want. And it's not going to be cased in, oh, because the Lord said. He will confirm it. He will, right? But the other thing is, so here, yeah, he will confirm it. But if you do not understand that obedience being put to the side, being a stepping stone is a part of your development, then you're not going to you're not going to keep developing. Because if obedience is if you look at obedience as this, I will do whatever you say, and so I'm not going to move, I'm not going to do anything until you tell me to do it, right? That's going to be part of that is going to have to die. You're going to have to erase your previous relationship with obedience and grab onto a new relationship with permission. And we don't talk enough about that. Because so many times in this Christian world, we talk about obedience from a place that humans are trying to control you, right? Like they're just trying to tell you all about obedience because they want you to obey the authorities that they have over you. So they want you to, they want to emphasize that as an obedient person, right? As obedient people in an obedient congregation, obedient to whomever. And I'm not saying, again, hear me, I'm not saying go out here and be disobedient. That's not what I'm saying. But what's missing in our spiritual development, like if we're going to be good parents, if we're going to be good leaders, right? If we're going to be apostles who understand our time and space and what we're carrying, right? If we're going to be that, you have to understand the whole breadth of what a person has. So obedience is important because they had to learn obedience. The scripture talks about that, right? Jesus learned obedience by what he suffered, and suffered wasn't like, being cut and crossed on. I mean, it wasn't always terrible. Like when you look at the word suffered in the original text, it means the experiences he's had. So experience will teach you things, right? And the whole point of experience teaching you things is so that you learn that lesson and then be done. I've learned that lesson. Okay, so now that's already in the back of my mind. And so if we're not training our people, if we're not leading our people to a stage of the fullness of development where we got the obedience thing, what we don't have is people who what we're not doing or we're not talking about is teaching people how to operate in the permission of God, where God's not giving you a directive. Right. And one of my programs, I can't remember which one I talk about it, right? But we always want to and talk about hearing the voice of God. We always love those direct words. Like we want those direct words, like those GPS things. In 300 feet, turn, turn right. Your destination is on the left in 1 meter, right? Like we want that. And the reason that we want that is because it gives us this safety of, okay, I can never be wrong if I just follow his directions. Well, pioneer, here's the issue. When you're called to pioneer something, okay, you are going to have to understand the breadth of his permission for the thing that you called to pioneer. I love what the scripture says. Gosh, I can't remember. It's in one of the epistles, right? He was like, I'm not going to boast about like I'm Paul and I'm called to these people over here, and I'm not going to boast about the people I'm not called to, but those who I'm called to, oh yeah, you're mine, you belong to me, right? And so as pioneers, there are certain things that we are in charge of, that we have been given charge of, and we're not doing it without God. Let me say that too. It's not that all of a sudden God shows you what he has given you to do as an assignment, or he has given you to do as a movement, or he has given you to do as something, and you go, okay, God, bet, and you run off and leave him, and then you come limping back after taking some blows and going, God, can you help me? That's not the pathway either. We do too much of that. We hear that and we feel like we have this responsibility. Going back to perfectionism I talked about before, right? We do that. We hear it like and we're so excited that we finally hear the call of God on our lives, and we finally understand the unique thing that He's called us to do. And we're like, great, I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to do this for you, God, and I'm going to do my best to carry it, and you're going to be so proud of me. And then we go off and leave Him as if He's on the sidelines going, go get it. And that's not how it's supposed to be. That He's never decided to do that, right? Anytime He sent somebody anywhere, He went with them. Let me say that again. Anytime God sent anybody anywhere, He went with them. Right. And it also goes back to, just think about Jesus on the cross. Now we think about Jesus as the Son of God, right? But some of our theology has us thinking that God and that Jesus did not have God or Holy Spirit with Him while He was walking here on the earth. Some of our theology have us believing that God was turned his back on Jesus on the cross, as if God was not with Jesus and Holy Spirit was with Jesus on the cross. Like, God does not send you someplace and then say, I'm not going to go with you. He is always with you. Always with you. Hey, Earl. Hey, Greg. Right? He's always with you. Okay. So your obedience. Now, if for those of you who are in entrepreneurship, right? So we've had this, I always liken it to in schools. Like, some of our school systems don't really encourage the development of entrepreneurs because kids who don't pair in a square. Remember when my kids were in kindergarten, it was like pair in a square, single file line, all of that other stuff. Like, a lot of our educational systems teach us to conform. And if you step out of that, then you are punished, or you are, you're punished in some sort of way, right? And so you had to overcome that to become entrepreneurial in the first place. And so there is this other thing in the erasure stage of pioneer development. There's this another place where you're going to have to change and erase and get a different relationship with this concept of obedience. Well, Julia, does that make sense? Are you with me? Okay. Now, I'm not asking you to agree with me. I'm just suggesting. Go talk to the Lord about it, right? Because some of you are not moving in the things that you're supposed to move in because you did not get a directive from God. And some of you are not moving without a directive because you have a bad example in your head of somebody who went out rogue. Like, you're so afraid of going rogue and being criticized that you do not exercise your authority. So you keep shrinking and you keep shrinking and you keep shrinking and you keep shrinking because no one else is doing this way. No one else is, well, who am I? And all of this stuff. And so your bravery, your courage is really based on frustration. What do I mean by that? Your bravery and courage is based on frustration. So you only can do the brave thing after you are so frustrated by standing alone, by doing it, or suppressing the desire. When you get tired and frustrating of suppressing the desire, then it just kind of bursts out, and then you do some brave action or something like that, right? It's like, I can't take it anymore. Okay, fine, right? And that is great for learning, but you can't operate in that place all the time. Our brave actions, our courageous actions, our pioneering actions have to come from a place of understanding and understanding where you are. And so the reason that God is talking to some of you the way He's talking to you, especially about pioneering, especially about standing out there, right? Like, I get it. Like, there are times where you absolutely feel like you are 100% by yourself, right? And you are not, like, I'm talking to the mature folks, right? You are not immature. You're not new to this. You have a relationship with God, and you're like, God, what is happening out here that I feel this disconnect? People I used to feel connected to, I'm not connected. I don't feel the same connection. Places I used to feel connected to, I don't feel the same connection, right? And all of a sudden you're like, what is this? And you are doubting whether or not it's you, or is it them, or is it the devil, or is it, all this other stuff. Like, is the enemy trying to trip you up? Is the enemy trying to get you so low away from the pack so that you can be more susceptible to falling? What if you had a greater, what if you just believed that He could keep you? What if your belief that God can show you truth, you have more faith in the fact that God can show you truth than in your ability to be deceived by the enemy? Because some of us, our belief that we can be deceived is so high. We have more faith in our ability to be deceived than we have in our ability to rightly divine truth. We have more faith in our ability to be deceived than we have in the ability to rightly divine truth. And why is it? Like, woman of God, man of God, who've been walking with the Lord all these years, like you listen, can I just say this? Can again, I'm not talking to babies. You got receipts about your discernment. This ain't new to you. The Lord has walked you through, taught you how to discern. He's taught you how to do this. And he's not teaching you from a place so that you can just go, oh my gosh, there's a spirit behind this bush. And I feel that, like, he's not doing those things just so you can just be some spiritual sideshow hustle, right? That you can be this this act, right, at the carnival that can do and discern all these spiritual things. No, pioneer, like what God is doing, he is starting with you, he's starting with your pioneer, and then he's getting you to the place where you can pour, where you can be a mother and father, where you can govern. And so when you go from 1, 2, and 3, right, in your development, he's taking you through those developments because he's going to start with you, and then he's going to start with the thing that he's called you to do that you see differently, that no one else sees, and it's not a trend yet, right? And but you're called to steward a part of it. You're called to steward something around it that is not, that just needs to be out here in the world, right? And then you get to the place where now you can govern and you can bring up and you can mother and father other pioneers, other people who have these thoughts, and you can do it from a place that's not broken, right? From a place that's not, I'm so wounded by my journey that I now can't disciple, I can't mother, I can't father, I can't mentor someone else because I've been so wounded by my journey. Or if I do mentor, mother, father, someone else, I'm doing it and I'm instilling in them a whole bunch of fear because I had such a hard time. That's not where you're going, especially in business. So I just wanted to just come on here, like, and I don't know if I even really kind of scratched the surface of this, but as a pioneer, your commitment to, let me say it this way, as a pioneer, just ask yourself, ask the Holy Spirit, has obedience become an idol in my life? That what you're doing in me is actually hindering me from taking that next step. Okay. You have learned how to obey. Now you need to learn how to govern. And he wants to teach you. Okay. You've learned how, and even in the, I'm just going to go back to the conversations around money sometimes, right? There's scriptures that talked about, I've learned in all things to be content. I have been abased and I have been abound, right? Some of y'all are very, very, very comfortable. You learned how to trust God with the lack. You've learned how to trust God in lack. When there's not a lot, you've learned how to trust God and keep him center, right? But there needs to be conversations around now. How do I learn how to trust God with the excess? When I don't have to rob Peter to pay Paul, when I have more than enough and I'm sitting in this place of abundance, how do I handle that? What does it look like in here? What does it look like in here? What does it look like here? Right? So there's the whole spectrum. All I'm saying is there's a whole spectrum. If God's talking to you about obey me, do what I say. If he has you, because every single person, I can guarantee you, every single person who's ever had an obedience journey with God, you have had this space where he said, turn left, stop, back up, turn right, all of that stuff. Like, you had to do that. And that was a part. Now you did that so you can learn his voice, you can learn his eyes, you can learn his ways, right? Some of you, when you go to the grocery store without your parent, you don't have to ask you don't have to call them up and be like, hey mom, what kind of milk you want? Because you know what your mama likes. And she'll be mad if you get the cheap paper towels versus the brand name ones, because she likes, you know what I mean? Like, there's something in the relationship where there's certain things you don't ask for anymore. And everywhere else in our natural lives, we understand that. If your 16-year-old who is fully functioning, right? If your fully functioning 16-year-old asks you to go to the bathroom anytime he has to go to the bathroom, you're gonna look at that like something's wrong. Are you not? Right? If your 1-year-old asks you to go to the bathroom or your 2-year-old asks you to go to the bathroom, that's normal because their age range, their maturity level says, okay, that makes sense. But if your 19-year-old has to ask you to go to the bathroom anytime he has to go to the bathroom, something about that ain't right. Right? And so the things that you and but if your 19-year-old went to the bathroom, didn't ask your permission, you wouldn't be mad at it. Like, how come you didn't come ask me? All right. Hey, pioneer, you've been obedient. You will continue to be obedient. But if you're in a space now where you've been asking God for turn by turn directions and he hasn't given you any, maybe it's time to stop asking for the turn by turn directions. I said, okay, God, I know I hear you. You know, I know I hear you. You know I hear you. I'm asking you these things and you're not answering in this particular way. How are you answering me? What is it that I need to be focusing on? That is going to be a question. That's going to be the next question for your next level of breakthrough. That's going to be the next question for your next level of breakthrough. All right. All right. So y'all do y'all hear what I'm saying? Do you hear what I'm saying? Right. And here's the other thing. I'm just going to say this too, because maybe this will be the next one. Where are we? Okay. Yeah. Maybe this will be the next one. Because I want to talk about true mothers and fathers in the kingdom. I want to talk about the apostolic in business and whatnot, and what that really means when it comes to people development. Because we have to get to a place where if there's no succession plan or the things that we're carrying and we're not replicating, then we have to ask ourselves why. Okay. And I'm just going to say it this way. This is just me, what's in my heart that I've recognized. I was like, Lord, here's what I don't understand. I get that everybody goes through something, but what I don't want to continue seeing in this cycle of you had to fight, battle, and all of this other stuff to get to the understanding that you have, the revelation that you have, and all that other stuff. And so now when you teach people, when you're supposed to be mentoring and pouring in and discipling people, you are crippling them because now you're trying to make them like you. How do we get to a place where we can, I love the scripture that says, raise up a child in the way that they should go, in the way they should go, not the way you hope they go because it's going to prove you're a good parent. Not the way you hope they'll go because, you got something to put on you got a front to put towards, some other people. Right. When I started, and so maybe because that's where we're going. Like there's a whole idea of governance. I say it this way. If you haven't heard, I say it this way. Hey, pioneers. And maybe this will be the next one, the next video I make. I don't know. We'll see. But I call it the grumpy old troll analogy. The grumpy old troll who lives under the bridge. Now, that was my kids were into Dora the Explorer when they were little. And there was a whole song about the grumpy old troll who lived under the bridge, right? But so many of us pioneers, you're pioneering something. Yes, because there's a point for the thing that you're actually pioneering. But then once you pioneered the thing, then there's another place after that. And so many of us are struggling with, let me just establish the thing that I'm supposed to pioneer. Yeah, there's a thing that you're supposed to pioneer, but then there's another part after that where you step into a place where you become the poor, where listen, leaders in the kingdom don't have solutions. Leaders in the kingdom are solutions. You are the solution. You are the answer, right? And so when you step from the place that you have pioneered, then you step into a place where you can mentor and pour yourself, be yourself like others, and can drip, and you can be in the place of a different place. I call it governance, where now you are more in that place of governing the body than you are in the day-to-day aspects of certain things, right? And in the grumpy old troll analogy, I say it this way. Here's the process. What God is doing in the lives of pioneers, especially in business. But what God, and it really doesn't matter what you're pioneering. I mean, this is going to be my lane is business, pioneers in business. Other people are pioneers in education and technologies and things of that nature. My lane is business, and I'm called to the pioneers of business in business, right? Here's what happens. Most of us, we get an idea. Just picture yourself for a minute standing in front of a jungle. All you see is jungle, trees, vines, and all that other stuff. You're hot and sweaty. And you pick up a machete and you go, oh, I'm a pioneer. Everything about pioneering and being a trailblazer says I got to make the trail. So in your own chord, you go, oh, I got a machete in my hand. Okay, let me go hack it. And you hack and hack and hack. And you tell yourself some of the things that you've heard that you can't stop, and people don't quit. And you got to be up at dawn, and you got to be the first one there, the last one, blah, 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 like whatever it is that you believe, right? You got to be online, and you just doing all this hacking and hacking and hacking. And while you're hacking, you are getting cut by thorns, right? Spiders are falling down, getting in your hair. You are being bit by snakes. You're doing all this other stuff. And then you hack and you finally get on the other side and you collapse and you look back and there's a trail that you made. But you get to the other side and you need an ambulance to come with vitamin K, a IV drip, and all that other stuff because you just barely made it. You just barely made it. But I made it by the grace of God. I fought through. I fought the good fight. And now you land on the stretcher, having the ambulance, the EMS people tend to you while you're doing there. Oh, I did it. And you look back. And now you see some other people. And it's like, okay, so the path that you cut with a machete with your own hand, now it's being paved. Right? And then now the road is paved, and then they're coming and drawing those lines in the roads, and then somebody's coming and putting the lights up, and then somebody's coming and putting the landscaping, the bushes, and all that other stuff. So the thing that you have pioneered, you look back, and now it's a smoother ride. There's a ribbon cutting ceremony, but you still laying on a gurney because you still, you hustled and you ground. Okay, I don't know, your way through it. And so now you're watching, and then there's a ribbon cutting, and then there's all these people that are coming over the territory that you just pioneered. And one person looks up at the light post and go, I'm sorry, are those LED lights? Are those fluorescence lights? LED lights would be so much more earth friendly. What is this gravel made of, like sand? Why is this not recyclable material? And the people are coming over and they start criticizing the things. Now you hear it as criticism because now somebody is talking about the light post and someone is talking about these plants on the side of the road. They are not locally sourced. They need to be sourced someplace else. So now you sitting over there and you get so mad because you're like, how dare you? Do you know what I had to do to come over this? I had to do this and da, 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 da. And now and so the people who are coming behind you, now you become the grumpy old troll who lives under the bridge because the way that you did it was so hard that anybody who says anything differently, who does not honor you in the way that you feel like you're supposed to be honored, is now a threat. When that's not, and that's what's happening to most people. So you're supposed to be over there as a mother and father in the kingdom, but you can't because you're too busy being a grumpy old troll. Now you want people to pay dues that you hated paying when inheritance. Okay, I'm not going to go to that one. Anyway, right? That's how we live in a culture right now. And so now we want to mentor people from place of grumpy old troll. We want to mother and father people from place of grumpy old troll. So anytime someone comes up with an idea, you take it as criticism because it hurts you and costs you so much to do what you had to do. Backtrack. Let's go back. Let's rewind that vision back. What if instead of doing the former, you went back and you're standing there in your front of the brush, you got a machete in your hand, and you're going with God Going with God. Not, oh, God, you gave me this revelation. No problem. It's my responsibility just to go by myself and leave you. And then you can tell me I did a good job later. Right? Now you're going to go with you. So you standing there and you're like, okay, God, what do you want me to do? And he goes, hey, here's what I want you to do. Step 1 in Pioneer. I need you to know I love you. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to cut 50 feet. Now I want you to go on vacation. I want to talk to you for a minute. I want you to enjoy your self-care. I want you to do all these other things. Now, while you're on vacation, you only cut 50 feet. While you're on vacation, you meet Dan and Barb. Dan and Barb has a landscaping company. Hey, Dan and Barb, y'all have a good time on vacation. Then God comes back and says, okay, come back from vacation. Now, here's what I want you to do. For the next 2 years, right? I want you to forge forward, but I don't want you to use a machete. I want you to go down the street, rent the hoe, like rent the ditch witch, right? Like rent, da, da, da. And this is what and he get, he's like, do this. And you're like, well, God, I don't know if I want to do that. He goes, okay, say more. I think I really like this idea. I heard somebody had this thing. We'll go do that. And so now for 2 years, you're like, hey, this is what I'm doing. And this is the way that I'm doing it. And you're going on vacations. You're being at the kids' games. You're doing these things. You're meeting people while you're out there. So when you go to rent the ditch witch, all of a sudden you see, you meet Stan, and Stan is out there like, hey, I got this, I got this idea that I'm thinking about for new street posts and all this other stuff. And you're like, oh, that's going to be so cool. Dope. Right. And you're doing it in a pace, in a way that's stopping, starting. And you're like, what's going on? So that when you finally get to the other side, you're not battered and bruised. You're not cut up. You can stop and stand and turn back and go, this is the Lord's doing. It's marvelous in my eyes. You have not fallen over the finish line depleted and dead. Right? You're actually energized. So then when you look back and he's like, you know what? That needs to be paved. Wait a minute. Who did I meet 4 years ago? I met Dan and Barb. Hey, Dan, I got this project. Can we go paint this? Yeah, we can paint that. I was like, yeah, we really need some painting or some landscaping. I met this landscaper when, a year and a half ago when God told me to, stop working on this for 2 years and then go do this. And I was like, well, Lord, that doesn't really fit. Why am I not continuing to forge forward? But you paused me for a minute. And now I'm over here in this thing that does not connect to the thing that I know I'm supposed to connect with. But I met these people. Are you seeing this, right? The process is different. So now it can be paved with one of the new relationships that you have. And it can be landscaped with a new relationship that you have. The lights can go up with a new relationship that you have. The ribbon cuts, these same people are coming across the bridge and they're looking. And that same person goes, are these locally sourced plants? Like, these plants aren't really supposed to be here. Like, how in the world is that supposed to happen? And instead of being the grumpy old troll who lives under the bridge, you can have a heart of a mother and father. You can have a heart of a mentor that can see, oh, here's what I see. I was called to create this pathway, but you, dear, you were called to plants and vegetation. And you have a relationship with plants and vegetation that I don't have. All right, come here. Let's talk. Tell me about your love of plants and vegetation. Why is this particular plant so harmful? And then that person starts opening up and talking about this. And you can go, hey, God's calling you to pioneer this thing when it comes to plants and vegetation. That's why it bugged you so much. So let me share my story about how he pioneered with me. So then you set them. So when God has already set them in front of their pathway, you can say, hey, you can do it this way, or you can do it this way. Hear the voice of God for the thing that you called to. The guy who's examining the lighting system. There's something in you that's like, hey, there's something in him that's connected to electricity and engineering and things of that nature. So now I can be a mentor to not the engineer, but to the person who's the pioneer and the way that they need to be moved along. But we can't do that. We can't do that. Hurt, bitter, because our process was different and people didn't understand us in our process and we didn't understand us in our process. So we got mad at everybody. And now we resent all the people who's coming over, saying the things, giving you clues to the things that God has called them to do. And instead of being a support for them and what they're called to do, now we end up acting like grumpy old trolls. The pioneer's path is different. And my background in leadership development and hearing and establishing the voice of God and what God is calling you to do, I recognize 3 things. Number one, you're gonna have to get real comfortable with you. Number two, you're gonna have to get real comfortable with the thing that you're called to do. And number three, you're gonna have to get real comfortable with the power that freaking exudes from you. Some of y'all just scared of your power, and you're so scared of your power that you don't allow yourself to go there, because it's like, if I go there, I'm going to be unrestrained and uncontrolled, and it's going to lash out in this way. You have to learn how to use your power. You have to learn how to use your power. Like, all the superhero stories are about that. The superhero stories are not about holding it in. The superhero story is about learn to use it. Don't deny it. Because when you deny, it's actually more dangerous than when you learn how to use it. Okay. I didn't mean to be this long, but do you hear, like, this pathway of helping pioneers identify who they are, what they're called to do, and how to walk with God in that thing is what I'm called to. I'm a coach like no other. I'm a consultant like no other. I'm an advisor like no other. Because depending on where you are in your development journey, you need a coach versus a consultant or an advisor. Just depends on where you are. So anyway, was this good? Oh, I just want to have more conversations like this. I want to work with people who are like, I completely understand. And yes, I need somebody who will tell me it. I can see it. I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm just kind of stuck here. And we need people who see other people, but not from a place of brokenness. Some of y'all see other people because you're too scared to deal with yourself. And so because you don't want to deal with you, then you focus on others. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about from this whole mature, healthy place of, I know this is who I am. And I can see other people, and I know what I'm called to do and not do and be in their lives. Do you know what I mean? Right. And so, yeah. So, I mean, listen, I know, and I'm like, Lord, let me talk about this, not from a place of I'm hurt. Let me talk about this from a place of my heart goes to you, pioneer, because I know you. I do. I know what you're thinking. I know how you're feeling. And I know you don't feel like you have a place to express that. And so a lot of what we do in, the company and some in the programs that we are revamping and all this other stuff, it's like, no, we're really going to focus on the pioneer and helping y'all go, you're all right. You're all right. You're all right. You good. You're right on track. That's what you are. You're right on track. All right. So anything else, anything that I said here that you're like, hey, can you talk more about this? Like, drop that in the comments. If there's something that and tag me, if there's something that I said that you were like, hey, Julia, can you talk a little bit more about this when it comes to the pioneer? Again, this video was not about releasing a whole bunch of disobedient people in the world. I'm talking to the people who you already know you got that obedience box checked. You already know that you will be obedient no matter what he says, when he says it. Right? So now you have to take that next step in your development and learn. Just as you learned obedience, you have to learn permission. You have to learn authority, right? You have to learn how to direct yourself. You have to learn self-direction. You have to learn how to give yourself permission. And not thinking that giving yourself permission is somehow excluding God. Like, that's not it. Like, it's all integrated. Anyway. All right. So if there's something else that you're like, hey, this piqued my interest, I want to talk about that. Can you talk about this? Then drop it in the chat and we'll see. Earl says, can you go more into when the pioneer has to steward both ventures? What do you mean by that, Earl? Let me see. Can you go more into when the pioneer has to steward both ventures? What do you mean by that? Tell me what you mean by that, and I might have some thoughts. I mean, it's not a might. I do have some thoughts on it. Are you talking from a, like, you have a couple of things, like you have different businesses? that you're talking about, because what you're called to pioneer and the vehicles that you use to pioneer are two different things. And you can pioneer something in different vehicles. So, anyway, alrighty. Fantastic. So yeah, so let me know if there's something else you want me to kind of talk about, because there's going to be a rise, and what we need is we need your rising, and what we need are people who will honor the people who poured into them in the past and not disrespect them, right? The people that you've learned from before, they weren't bad people. They weren't terrible people. You got what you were supposed to get from them. Honor them and keep going, right? So anyway, until next time, I'd love to interact with you in the chat. You got something else? If you have a business um, platform, podcast, or something that you have coming up, and you're looking for someone to give a different perspective on how to expand. I know their abundance is big and mindset is big and things of that nature, but they're pioneers being raised up in business, and I'm looking to support the pioneers and be like, hey, boo, you okay? You good. In fact, you're right on track. Let me tell you, let me help you in this space from a spiritual perspective. And guys, and here's the other thing that I love that I started recently embracing, not just from a spiritual scriptural perspective, but also from a research perspective. When I look at the academic scholarly research around this, it supports so many of the things that you guys you're going through, that you don't recognize that you're going through because someone just didn't tell you about that. So that's another one. We might get into that. Love y'all. Until next time. Bye now.